you're
I
good.
hear you loud and clear.
Alison, can you hear everything?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yes.
Fred's a little bit hard to hear.
Sorry, Alison.
Fred's a little bit hard to hear.
Okay.
I can turn him up.
It's pretty loud here. Yeah, anyway.
Joyce, how about you? Are you good?
Everything's perfect.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
You guys can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Then with everyone's agreement, please let's begin and open this Finance Advisory Committee for today, March the 19th. And the very first thing I'm wanting to do is the approval of the agenda and introduction of late items. Can I ask, over and above your package, are there any other late items that you wish to have introduced?
So we want to do an election.
So hearing none, there is one.
Just to be picky, adoption of minutes is not March 19th minutes that will be adopted by January 14th.
Oh, thank you.
The agenda. Sorry, we're approving the agenda. You're quite right. This is for Thursday, March the 19th.
I've noted that, Joyce. Thank you.
Okay. I would like, in terms of late items, to introduce as number 4.0, and that is the election of the chair of the Finance Advisory Committee meeting follows Steve Bellringer's resignation. So if people could just make a note, we'll put that under new business as item 4.0.
Michael, Allison here. Maybe we should save that for another meeting and when we're all present physically.
Well, from my position, I need to work with the chair,
Well,
so I don't have anyone to go to right now.
Okay, let it stand. Can I just ask by various salutations for approval of the agenda, please? Maybe people would be kind enough to wave their hands, because I can see, and if Fred would say yay or nay, that would be kind. Just approval of the agenda.
Yep.
Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Alison. And Fred, is that you're good with that?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay. The next subject is the adoption of the minutes, and that's the minutes of January the 14th Advisory Committee. And the recommendation is that the minutes of the Finance Advisory Committee be adopted. And could I please ask, I'm looking at adoption of the minutes, I see January the 14th, and then I see...
Yeah, we fixed that in the adoption of the agenda.
So what are we doing there then?
January 14th.
January the 14th, okay. Substitute March the 19th for January the 14th. Are there any comments, please, on the adoption of the minutes?
Michael, are we looking at the ones that got resent out with all my
Yes.
and my changes?
Yes.
Yes.
So we need to have as amended in the resolution?
No, because they already were amended and reattached to a new revised agenda, so it would be
Well, I
as
can't,
is.
I haven't opened up the revised agenda. I opened up the package on the agenda notes. Okay.
Sorry, Alison, there's a bit of an echo there. We're gonna have to take this a little more slowly. I missed some of that.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, I haven't had time to read the amended ones because they just came out, so would somebody clarify that they picked up the changes that I suggested and Joyce suggested? I believe they have. This is Joyce speaking. I believe that they have. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my understanding is that they have, and Alison, if you will take those understandings, I'm going to ask for the minutes of the January 14th Advisory Committee to be adopted. And again,
So moved.
so moved.
Yeah.
Seconded.
Yeah.
I've seconded, Rob. And can I ask for consent to that adoption,
Yes.
please?
Good.
Thank you. We can now move on. Public comment seems a little extraneous at the moment since the public aren't being admitted. So I gather at the moment we have no public. Do we have any public written comments?
No.
We don't. So with everyone's agreement then, I propose to move on to item number 4, new business. And that brings us to a matter of some consequence, as we have Steve Bellringer's resignation, and we do need to appoint a new chair. And to save me the effort of having people being kind of selected by voluntoldism, can I have any thoughts or suggestions from the floor here, please?
I would move that Fred be considered for the position. I think he's done a really good job. He's relatively new, and so he's got the energy, and I kind of hope that he might. I'll second that.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's been seconded, but I can only say I thoroughly support everything that you've just said, Joyce.
Yeah, and I agree too, Joyce. I think Fred, Fred, you've already chaired a meeting which went really well, I thought. I think you got the background. I'm really hoping that you'll consider.
I'm prepared to let my name stand.
Perfect.
Okay. Fred has said that he would be prepared to let his name stand. Could I have, I think the customary thing is I would propose that Fred Wagner takes over from Steve Bellringer as chair of the Financial Advisory Committee. And I'm wondering if I could have a seconder to that, please.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
Okay. Rob has seconded that. Any comments or discussion?
No, let's move on. Let's vote. Move on.
No.
Okay. As this is a delightfully non-contentious issue, could I just ask for the vote in favour of that motion then, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, thank you.
Fred, fervent and earnest congratulations on the principle there is no shortage of unpaid work. Welcome to the club.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was a vicious campaign for that position.
Yeah.
It was.
Yes.
So does this mean Fred takes over or what?
No,
now
we
that,
the
No.
presiding member must be in the room.
Oh, must be in the room. Got it. Fred's off the hook.
okay. Therefore, with Fred's permission, I'm going to continue this, and I'm going to move us on to item 4.1. I'm going to hand over to Raj. In my conversations with him prior to this, his request is that he will give a high-level, a significant, fairly high-level presentation, and take questions, if all are agreeable, afterwards. If you could perhaps accede to that, because given we're experiencing Zoom, I think we should let Raj go ahead. We'll hold our questions to afterwards. I'm asking your I'm looking around for nods of consent that would be the easiest way to go.
You're the boss, Michael. Let's go.
Okay, let's go indeed. Raj?
Can I ask a question, Michael? Is he making a PowerPoint presentation?
No, I'm verbal.
Okay.
No, I'll be making a
handing
verbal
this over to Raj.
presentation.
I just don't know whether we're going to be able to see it, that's all.
I do have notes for it that I can send out to everybody afterwards. I had made notes for myself, they're speaking notes, and I'd be more than happy to share them with everybody. But right now I'm prepared to speak verbally to all of the materials that were sent out. You have all the materials in front of you, so it's going to be an overview and a bringing together of all the materials you have. And then afterwards I would be more than happy to take questions on the individual items in item numbered 4.1 in the agenda.
Okay, please go ahead then.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Can everybody hear me clearly? Because then I'll just leave my computer
Yes.
facing the way it is. Okay, perfect.
That works great.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by speaking about the general fund. So overall, this year's budget contemplates a 7.6% tax rate increase for 2020, which is a net increase of $411,000 in expenditures. 4.1% of that 7.6, which is the equivalent of 221,000, addresses salaries issues. The salaries are adjusted. There's a CPI-based increase for staff, which is policy-based. We also had a compensation review that was conducted by Sanus Consultants back in 2018, which highlighted what salary levels should be to comparable municipalities. So over the past 2 years, we've been working towards getting the salaries to that level. So this budget actually brings the salaries to the levels that were recommended in the report. So approximately, in terms of dollars, it represents a $60,000 increase in municipal hall salaries and a $32,000 increase in library salaries. We also have the cost of restructuring/new hires. So we now have a director of engineering. In 2019, we also hired a fire chief. We also promoted Kevin to superintendent of public works. So those costs are also taken into consideration in the budget. We also have a 1.5% tax rate equivalent increase for the capital renewal and replacement policy to build up our capital reserves to be able to address infrastructure replacement that's going to be required in the upcoming years. Equivalent to a 1.1% tax rate increase is for contract costs, audit costs, IT maintenance, insurance costs, MIA insurance, Allison, primarily. And there is a $50,000 provision in the budget for council strategic initiatives, which is like one-time projects, and that represents about a 0.9% tax rate increase. All those were also highlighted in the table in the council report. I also wanted to highlight on the subject of salaries that there is no provision for any additional FTEs included in the 2020 budget. So we're projecting the FTE levels to remain at the same levels as 2019. The budget also includes the other significant item in the budget is the garbage parcel tax rate is going from $421,000 per household to $600 per household. That's $179 per household increase, which generally should remain fixed. The only large variable component in that will be the tipping fees, which will be based on organic waste volume. So overall, what does that mean to the average household? The average household, which is assessed at $1,087,000, will be paying municipal taxes of $2,364 a year, which represents a $179 increase from the previous year. And then the garbage parcel tax goes to $600, which is another $179 increase. So total municipal taxes and parcel taxes combined for the household that's assessed at $1,087,000 will be about $3,100. That's in comparison to $2,800 last year, so we're looking at about a just over $300 increase. The other major component of the general fund budget is capital projects. We have a provision for about $6.4 million in capital projects in the general fund for 2020. In terms of the large projects there, we have the community center municipal hall. It's a $14.5 million project, but $2 million is included in 2020, and the rest of it is in the outer years. We've got a $1.5 million provision for the construction replacement of the fire hall, an $800,000 budget provision for the multi-use path. We have two major culverts that need to be replaced with a budget provision of about $900,000, and that's the Honeymoon culvert and the Miller Road culvert. We've got the annual roads rehabilitation program with $400,000. We'll be replacing the artificial turf at the artificial turf field, which has a budget provision of $300,000. And in terms of major equipment, a salt and gravel loader replacement is included in the budget for $100,000. That being said, there is a complete detailed list of all the capital projects in the budget book for 2020, and there is a 5-year summary schedule for capital projects in the budget book as well. And I'm going to switch over to our water systems. The operating budget and water systems, there are rate increases proposed in all the water utilities. They were supported by the LACs. The rate increases are generally necessary to increase the contribution to asset reserves because our asset reserve balances are light in contrast to the infrastructure replacement decisions that we'll be facing in the upcoming years and even in the next year. In terms of the capital budgets for the water systems, the water utility, the largest provision is for the water treatment plant in 2020. We have a $6.6 million provision for the project. It's on page, the details of that can be seen on page 32 or 33 of your budget book. Sorry, there's a $6.6 million provision overall for water projects. Of those, $6.1 million is for the water treatment plant, and $500,000 is for remaining works across all water systems. We did do a budget consultation with the public, so we had 2 public budget consultation sessions during the budget process. They were held at Municipal Hall. One was an evening session and one was a daytime session. They were advertised in the paper. They took place on February 12th and 13th. We had a meeting with the Cove Bay water system as well to go over the proposed budget and the rate increases. And then we held a combined meeting of the remaining 6 water local advisory committees to go over the capital projects and the operating budgets as well.
Yeah, Raj,
yes.
Fred here. Just a question. In your public consultation that you provided and the outlined into your correspondence with council, was there really only about 10 people in total that attended these sessions?
About there, yes.
Okay.
I believe there were about 4 to 5. I don't have the exact numbers. Aoife might have them, and she's got it.
Yeah, I was looking at your form. It would look like 5 at one meeting and maybe 5 or 6 at another meeting.
Yeah, that sounds about right, Fred.
Because that seems like a remarkably low number.
Actually, that's high, I think.
Fred, I will just come in here. I will just come in here for one second, saying that I'm afraid that is wholly consistent with inviting people to open meetings on this subject. It is disappointing, but it's consistent with previous years. So nothing remarkable, but it's sad nevertheless.
Yeah, I'm just surprised with the fact that there was such a large proposed increase in tax this year.
Yeah.
That might have generated a reaction. I guess it kind of indicates, I don't know, public, I don't know, either awareness or interest or whatever. So that's fine. I mean, they have an opportunity if they choose to or not. That's fine.
Fred, the only thing that wasn't included in your package, but it is included in the council agenda package that will be posted online today, and that was, I added an additional appendix to my council report. It's Appendix E, and that's all of the email responses that I received to the budget from the public.
Okay.
And my responses to those. So that is included in the agenda package that Hope will be posting today and available online. If not this afternoon, by tomorrow for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's I'm going to open it up to questions. I mean, it's a fairly thick package, so rather than going through that, I'm hoping you guys have all had a chance to look through it. I've received extensive feedback from Allison, and I have in the revised package, I've taken Allison's comments into consideration and revised my report to council and the financial plan bylaw. There is one major change I'll be making, sorry, I should have spoken to that earlier. I'll do that after this meeting, and that is taking into consideration the proceeds from the sale of public lands. So that's the sale to the health center and to the Bellringer Group. I forgot to include those in the financial plan. I will include revenue coming in from those and a contribution to reserves in 2020.
Okay, for the sake of good order, and we're on a Zoom, may I ask, if I ask people, it's sort of kind of in order, I've got your photographs in front of me for questions, and Joyce, may I start with you for any questions you may have to Raj?
I have 2 questions. The first one is, it's sort of a question / comment. One of the things that I'm looking at in the capital expenditures, I was trying to figure out what the impact of the capital expenditures would be on operating. And actually, when I look at the capital expenditures, for the most part, we're not looking at them, but I would really like to know that there is a protocol, I suppose, that when staff come forward or when council comes forward with capital projects, that they are looking at the impact of operating and that it is documented in our 5-year budget. The only one that's relevant, and it sounds stupid, is the toilet at Quarry. Like, is that going to reduce the amount of staff time involved in cleaning up, or is it adding an extra station, and what is the impact? It's a very small one, but it's more the protocol that I'm interested in.
So Joyce, with respect to that, our capital budget form has an operating section on it as well. So whenever staff are requesting a capital project or making a capital request, they're asked to provide what the operating impacts will be on an ongoing basis. So we do capture them in operating. In terms of this year's projects, the 2020 projects, I mean, most of the operating impacts are the community center project, which are incorporated into the financial plan. Talking about the quarry toilets, maintenance would be done with existing staff, so it doesn't have a significant, it doesn't have an operating impact.
So my comment is that for future years, I would love a paragraph to describe those impacts to the Finance Advisory Committee. I really felt that I hadn't done my due diligence in the last when it was presented, but I also realized it was a very small item that I was really focused on. But I would feel much better if, when you're looking at you've got that graph about what the protocol is. I would really like to make sure that the Finance Committee gets to see that operating cost impact, please.
For sure, I've made a note of that, and I'll make sure that we include that in our reports to the Finance Advisory Committee in the future.
Great.
Joyce, did you have anything else?
I have one other just observation. I was shocked to see that we're looking at over $1 million increase in tax revenue over the course of 5 years. That just seems extraordinary.
Sorry, I missed that.
I know that you've used certain percentages and stuff, but unless I'm not reading it properly, I really was surprised.
Yeah, our debt servicing costs are going to increase over the next 5 years. If you take a look, we're taking on about $9 million in debt. And so a lot of that cost is in the debt servicing costs. We'll be repaying principal and interest on that debt. And then it also takes into consideration in the outer years. Again, the other big thing is the operating impact of the new community center. I mean, there will be additional revenues, but there'll be additional resources required. So there is an additional cost there. I mean, all those small things add up.
Increase,
Pardon?
and I'm just really worried, how sustainable is that? And it's not you, Raj, I'm
Yeah.
saying to council, are we sure?
Yeah.
Sure?
Okay, Joyce, I think truly your point is well taken on that, and especially a note for impacts on the operation from capital projects, making sure there is something more fulsome for the finance committee to review. No, thank you very much. And none of these are going to fall on deaf ears, Joyce, because I've got notes of them, which means not only will I have Fred notes on, but so will Fred.
This is Fred here.
Okay, we'll hand over to Fred next.
Just a couple points. One, I think, is that in looking at capital projects, and particularly capital reserves going forward, Raj, you identify in your report a review sometime later this year as regards to capital reserves for projects.
I'm constantly looking at capital reserves, Fred. I am going to incorporate a schedule into the budget book by Monday.
Okay.
And I will send it out by email to all of the Finance Advisory Committee members as well.
Okay, because
I ran out of time to
your
be able
5-year
to...
plan that you were talked about generally addressing capital reserves.
Yeah.
Because I think there's been question, and a reasonable question, whether our reserves are satisfactory or if we're looking far enough ahead as it relates to replacement of assets and having those funds available to support that going forward. And I just think, as I said, as I read it in one of your documents, it says that there is a process to be underway through, I think, the second quarter or third quarter. It just seems to me that that's something that this committee should be actively involved with. At least even in the early discussion phases around what is going to be addressed in that.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. So what I will do is, I'm going to add that schedule, but we'll also add as an agenda item for the next Finance Advisory Committee, review of the reserve schedule.
Okay.
So that we can have a fulsome discussion at the Finance Advisory Committee.
I just think it's a perfect fit for this committee.
Agreed, Fred, and thank you for that. And future chair, any other questions from you?
Fred here again.
Yes. Any other questions that you have, Fred?
Yeah, just a quick one. And it's not. With the circumstances that we're dealing with right now around the pandemic and that sort of thing, is there a position being taken or being considered by the municipality relative to even possible deferral of everything that's not considered essential until we have no outcomes?
Fred, I will kind of take that one on in as much as you bet, because this is a budget which lays out, obviously, as all budgets do. Mm-hmm. But before anything is actually going to be committed, and if you like, we empty the money tank, we better be sure there's enough fuel in that tank to see us through the year. So some of us will be extremely hawkish on any short-term expenditures, while the outlook on life generally is so uncertain.
Yeah, it just seems that some of these items could be readily deferred, and they're substantial dollars.
I think there is no disagreement that whatever disappointment it might cause by deferring items, we don't spend money at this point of view at these times until we are, on firmer footing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, can I hand over next questions to Rob, please?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of ones. Number one, just on the tax exemption, because we're voting on that. Raj, can you explain a bit what we're talking about? It's a 4-year term, it looks like, and what the impact, you got 141 there, and then 57 is exempt tax related to the municipality. Just lay out what's happening there. And personally, what I'm obviously concerned, like everybody, at the rate of increase right now, and I'm looking at how can we buffer that, and I'm just curious to see what impact that's having on our tax base.
So permissive tax exemptions are approved by council for nonprofit organizations within the community. Generally, they're approved for a 4-year term, so for the council term. I mean, some municipalities review them on an annual basis. So what those numbers are telling you is that there are organizations, I believe there are about 14 or 15, I'm just going off the top of my head, but a handful of organizations that have applied for and received the permissive tax exemption. And so they will not be paying, so they would have otherwise been paying $141,700 in taxes to all taxing authorities. And so when you exempt them from taxes, they're also exempt from paying taxes for the other taxing authorities, being school taxes, the Municipal Finance Authority, etc., etc. So that represents $57,200 in municipal taxes. And what ends up happening is that $57,200, we still need to collect that taxation revenue to balance the budget, so it gets distributed amongst the existing taxpayer base. So those people, so those taxes are not paid, they just simply are not paid by these taxpayers, and they're absorbed by the rest of the taxpayers. The principle behind that is that these organizations are providing community benefit.
Okay, good. The water districts, you touched on them quite briefly. I sort of looked through the minutes. Anything that we should know about? It sounded like some were a bit contentious. They weren't all in agreement on.
I think the meetings went well overall, having the chairs, having all the chairs there, and the discussion was relatively respectful. They all seemed, my perception was that they all seemed in agreement with the rate increases. They all acknowledged that there are infrastructure issues and their reserves are light. And so increases are required, but they need to be sustainable as well. There was quite a bit of discussion about the capital projects, some disagreement. So one of the major projects that has been spoken about is the need for a water master study, for an island-wide study. And there seemed to be disagreement on, while there seemed to be a need, recognition of a need for a water study, there seemed to be disagreement in terms of the cost of that study and the cost recovery method that was used to allocate the cost of that study. So what we've done with it was a $300,000 budget request. We put in $50,000 a year in the budget instead of the full $300,000 in 2020, and we'll be phasing that approach. And it's a provision in the budget at this time. So and then we'll take a look at distributing the cost of it equitably to the water systems.
One more question?
Sure, so please go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. Final question on what proportion of people are tax deferring right now? So, and how much of an impact is that having on us getting?
I'm going to have to get back to you on that. It doesn't have any tax impact on us, because what that does, if somebody defers their taxes, what they're doing is they're taking out a loan from the province. So the province is paying their taxes to us on their behalf. So we receive that tax revenue regardless of whether they defer or not.
Okay. Thanks.
I think that was the drift.
That was my original. Sorry to go around it the long way. We got there at the end of the day.
No, not at all. Let's get that one out, because I think it's something that needs to be done.
Yeah.
Alison, you have your head down a little bit, which is a shame. Can we hand this over to you for questions?
Oh, Alison, your mic is muted, so you're going to have to unmute, or oh, there we go. Can you unmute, or would you like me to? Oh, there you go.
I'm unmuted it.
We can hear you.
Sorry, I'm printing off something. So, part of my big problem is we don't have detail of the reserve in and out, nor do we have a 5-year continuity reserve by fund, and I'm quite concerned about what's going in and what's going into the reductions and what's going into the replacement reserve fund. So I'm not comfortable going forward with this budget without having that kind of detail. I would like to have the detail by individual amount of debt for the debt borrowing. I'd like to have the detail of what the grants are.
you speak to the mic?
Allison, you're far away from the mic. We can't hear you. We're losing you.
Oh, I'm sitting right in front of the iPad. So
There, now you picked up.
Yes.
can't get any better. I'm not sitting on top. So looking at other revenue, for example, we've got $6 million, and I got, unfortunately, the old financial plan. I think there's been a small change, but there's still a very significant difference in the grant line from year to year. There's a still a significant difference in the other revenue line from year to year. We don't have a lot of detail on that. Maybe you've got to go through all the individual things and add them up. And the transfers from reserves and to reserves, I mean, I really want to see a 5-year continuity revised fund of all that, those numbers. And then looking at the debt servicing and the debt principal payments, just by which of the debts being paid and by when. And, so, you know, I don't understand why we can't have that kind of detail. And,
Well, I'm happy to provide you that kind of detail if you would put those questions in an email to me, but that is not the level of detail that I would provide for public consumption. It's, so...
that kind of detail in the past years, and I'm used to getting, I think that's the kind of detail that the finance committee needs to have, so that they can, make an informed comment on the sustainability of the whole thing. As Joyce says, it's a huge tax increase, and somewhere in the comments, there's statements that we're not putting enough into reserves for asset replacement, yet the amount we would normally put in, 300,000 of that is being put into a whole fund for alternative transportation, rather than, you know, where's that money going to come from? And I know everybody wants to do it, but we shouldn't be doing new things at the expense of what we tried to establish for putting away for asset replacement reserves.
I believe we are not doing that. We are putting the increases that you speak about into the asset reserve, but we've spoken about this at a previous meeting as well, Allison. We have no source of funding for new projects, so if we don't put any money into the other reserves, we will not be able to fund anything other than replacement and renewal of assets. In terms of, and can I finish that? I'm talking, Allison. So in terms, I'm not finished, sorry. Also, what I was going to say was, in terms of the discussion of the reserve schedule, that is a discussion that needs to happen in the Finance Advisory Committee, and we just said we would bring that forward at the next meeting. I'm more than happy. I need the Finance Committee's input into where those contributions should go, and I'm more than willing to take the lead from the Finance Committee on that. But in the 8 years that I've been in municipal finance, I have never seen council be provided with the level of detail that you are asking me for.
Okay, I think then as chair, I'm going to issue my prerogative here and say, Alison, please, if there is extreme detail that you're asking for, or detail that you're asking for, which really doesn't suit a meeting of our type right now, especially as we're labouring under working our first Zoom conference, I'm going to humbly request that you take that with Raj offline and let him satisfy your individual questions there.
Well, I'm sorry, Michael, I can't agree with that, and at that point I am hanging up because you obviously don't care about my thoughts.
Sorry, Alison, you're not. We can't hear you. You need to speak quietly.
I am leaving the meeting.
Okay. Right. So, do we have? Can I just ask, please, from Rob, from Fred, from anyone else present, if we have any other questions for Raj?
Maybe just a general question which we're all thinking of is just with what's been going on the last couple of days, weeks and all that, we're going to basically, we'll pass this, it's going to give us a framework, and then we're going to have to roll with the punches basically on the projects and that. That's sort of in a
Sorry,
nutshell.
Ross. You need to come closer to the mic.
Sorry, Joyce. I was just asking Raj, with what's happening right now, we're basically moving forward on a framework under conditions, obviously, that were preset. And as conditions unfold, we're going to have to roll with the punches on a lot of the projects and spending of that and see where things are going.
Okay.
And Raj sort of nodded. I think that's sort of the plan, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's gonna, I mean, we are mobilizing, planning to mobilize next week for the water treatment plant. The contractor is scheduled to be on site, but generally speaking, I don't think we'll have the resources to do a lot of the work, so that there will be replanning, reprioritizing of what we can do.
Okay. Can I just ask if I have noted the questions raised by Joyce. I've noticed the questions raised by Fred and by Rob. The only additional point I would make as a member of the Finance Committee is that we are working on an asset management plan, and I think we must be prepared for the fact that we haven't got the results of that, but that could have an implication on our thinking. And I would ask people to bear in mind that it'll be some little while before this is completed, and I hope, in terms of our reserves, it brings no unpleasant surprises. So,
I'd like to, it seems to me that there's a message that needs to go to the public, and that is, it's picking up on what's happening with the coronavirus, obviously, and that we're not going to move forward on anything that we can't do. I guess when you look at the major projects like the community center especially, but also the fire hall, the public needs to be assured that we're not going to move forward on something that we can't afford. I really believe council needs to give that message. And it also needs to walk the talk, like no more studies until we know we've got the money and we can afford it. Because that's the complaint I'm hearing over and over again. We're spending so much money on consultation and design, and we're not going anywhere. This is a time where it is really possible for, because of the coronavirus, it's really possible for council to say, maybe we need to put on pause what we're thinking. So it's just a comment that I have. I know it's political as opposed to finance advisory, but I have to say it.
Joyce, I'd like to say that your point is well taken, hasn't fallen on deaf ears, and I think you've got two councillors, and I'm looking at Rob here, who totally agree with the spirit and the sentiments that you've expressed.
And just Joyce, just to comment on that, I think on most of the capital projects right now, the work's been done in the background, so a lot of it's waiting. So the community center is a perfect example. Fire hall, we're going around seeing what we can get as far as pricing goes. So everything is sort of past that stage, and I agree with you. I don't want to be studying or going after new projects at this stage at all. I think if we manage to roll everything out, which is what, you know, I know Michael and I, we were elected on, is trying to get through all the capital project. That would be an incredible feat. So that's where I'm sort of at, and I'm very concerned about that. I think most of council is concerned about, you know, making sure that we can finance this, and some of it will roll out, like the community center might not happen, right? And that will then free up some other areas, but then you get the honeymoon culvert thrown in there at the last minute, so we're going to have to be nimble, but I think most of the studies and background work has been done. There's no, I don't see any other work being paid for the capital projects as far as studies go or anything like that.
The only one that we have in the budget, and it's absolutely critical, is the Snug Cove sewer capacity study, and that is crucial to get an understanding of basically where we're at with capacity and what we need to do to go forward, because I mean, there was a presentation to council, actually, was that enclosed? Am I allowed to, I can't remember if that was enclosed, but generally speaking, we're not doing any exploratory studies for future spending. Only studies we have underway are critical studies that address our infrastructure problems, and if they're not done, we could have bigger problems.
Yeah.
Good comment, Joyce.
Okay. I think that addresses the spirit of Joyce's comments. Fred, we've been around the table asking if there's anything else. Is there anything else?
This is Fred. Can I just make one comment or thought?
Yeah.
One of those points, I think we're addressing a lot of stuff here in a circle. I think it may be an opportunity, again, going forward this year, and we talk about process, and this is for the role of the committee, as it relates to budgeting and in terms of expectations, both from a management perspective and from a committee perspective, that sometime in the course of the next quarter or two, that we spend some time looking at that part of the process around the budgeting, and to make sure that everybody is clear on both sides in terms of expectations and the amount of information that's provided and what's reasonable, I think, at the same time. So it's just, I know it's been a very difficult process this last year, and I appreciate the things that Raj and staff have gone through the course of this last, 6 or 9 months, but I think that it's something we can address going forward, and to ensure that the next round of budgeting is, I'll say, more comfortable for both parties, for both management and the committee.
Thank you, Fred, and just because I'm very temporary chair here, I'll take it upon myself to work with you to make sure that the sentiments you've just expressed, which I know Steph will reflect in the minutes, are carried forward. If that is the case, having been around the table, I'm actually going to see that at 4.H we have the recommendation in front of us, which I will read out, that given the comments we've all just raised, that the recommendation is that the Finance Advisory Committee recommends that Council approve the 2020 to 2024 5-year financial bylaw number 508/2020 as presented at the March 19th, 2020 Finance Advisory Committee meeting. Could I have a seconder for that, please?
I'll second that.
You'll second that. Okay, we have it on the table. We have Fred second it. Before I call the question, are there any further discussion? Joyce.
Sorry. I really think there's an amendment that I could support to that, and that is with the understanding that rigorous review of the projected 5-year expenditures be put in place. I just really, that $1 million increase just really bothers me a lot.
All right, I will just ask that Steph reads that out again as you said it, Joyce, to make sure, given the echo in this room, that we've got it correctly.
Can you repeat it?
Could you just repeat that? Well, to do it. I know it's asking a lot, Joyce. Yeah.
With
It was basically the essence was that it was subject to a rigorous
review of the 5-year capital spending. Is that?
The 5-year
Expenditures.
I'll have to look at it, but it's 5-year expenditure plan or tax revenue. I think I've got to go back to it.
Joyce, can I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we want to, I mean, we could add this in as an amendment, but that's going to then maybe trigger work for staff. I believe, like having worked with Raj behind the scenes, that, I mean, I'm obviously very concerned about what you're concerned about, and I do think that review is happening right now as part of the process. I don't think it's being missed. So I'm wondering if we need to add that in. I mean, there's lots of things that go into obviously putting forward a budget, this being one of them, the rigorous review, and I can think of probably a list of 10 other things. I mean, we've heard that it is being done, that it is being looked at. I definitely feel it's being looked at. We know we're going to have to be nimble moving forward, that if something goes off the rails, we're going to have to readjust. I'm just wondering if we need to add in an amendment, or if we can keep the motion very simple, pass this, but with the understanding from this committee and also from staff as well, that this rigorous review is part of any good budgeting process that we're doing and we should be doing as a course of normal action, that it isn't something we need to add in as an extra amendment.
Could we make it, Joyce, a note on our minutes that this comment was made?
I guess we could, but my problem with the Finance Advisory Committee is every time we have substantive discussion about something, it either doesn't get reported because it's in camera meeting, or we do something like this. And I honestly feel, as a community member, it looks like I'm not doing my job, you know, and it bothers me. It bothers me because my integrity is at stake in the review of this. The way it's worded, it sounds like we fully support what's been put forward, and quite honestly, it's not Raj's work I don't support, it's the projection of where we're going that I have serious caution about. Because if you think about it, if the markets stay the way they are, our real estate values are going to go down. Can you imagine what our tax rates are going to do? Like, it's beyond belief what's going to happen with the projection of this. So I feel that it doesn't have to be an amendment. You can figure it out. But I want, if everybody supports what I'm saying, I would like a caution to be put with this motion.
Could we?
This is Fred here.
Yeah.
Maybe I can just say something?
Yeah.
I think we've already identified a couple areas. One is capital reserves. One is probably process around planning and budget. And I think, to me, this probably also can be a third point, or it's up to those points, that say that the committee, you know, works with management and in addressing, I don't know, you can say expenditures, but it's both capital and operating going forward, recognizing the financial realities that we're known to be facing, plus those that may occur because of certain circumstances.
So we could pass the motion as presented, and then you could propose a motion for that where it's really solidly included in the minutes. I would support that.
Well, I think it should be included as a point of discussion that the committee intends to do this. I just don't know, Joyce, if it needs a motion to do it.
Joyce, could we include it as a separate part of the minutes, which Rob and I will take forward to council at the next council meeting?
Yeah, as long as it's public.
Yeah, and what is more, I will ask that Steph just runs that part of the minutes through you before we go into print, just to make sure that we've got the wording on that correct, that this was noted by the Financial Advisory Committee and agreed to be brought forward to council as a concern. And that concern, I might just ask Steph maybe to agree, because the concern revolves around, I'm just going to ask for your wording again as you gave it to us, Joyce.
I've got to find it again.
It was stringent review, it was ongoing stringent review.
Rigorous review.
Rigorous review. Okay, ongoing rigorous review of the 5-year plan.
Expenditure plan?
Yes. And may I say 5-year plan as just expenditures, so it's therefore more broadly based?
Yeah.
Because if that's what you're saying, then that gives sufficient direction to Steph just to make sure we've got it recorded into satisfaction.
Well, the part that raised my attention was the property tax levy going from $5,837,700 in 2020 to $6,837,800 in 2024. It's a full $1 million increase in property tax levy. And that would be lovely if we got all new properties and blah, blah, blah. We all know that. And yet, the reason why we have those revenues reflected in the 5-year plan is because we know we've got the expenditures that we're going to have to cover off, and that's how we got to the property tax levy. So it's the revenue and the expenditure in the 5-year plan.
Joyce, can I speak to that a little bit? If I could get everybody to switch their attention to page 6 of the draft budget book. It's just a different way of looking at that $1 million. But before I speak to that, you were talking about the property assessment values, reflecting how much you pay in taxes. So although there is a relationship between assessed values and property taxes, if everybody's assessments went down, the amount of property tax is not impacted by the assessed values. That remains the same. But that being said, if your assessed values went down, essentially the proportion of tax that you pay in comparison to the wealth reflected in your property would become higher.
Exactly.
So that would happen. There's no question about that. But it wouldn't impact the dollar value of your taxes. So when you
I totally know that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that $1 million is actually represented. I just wanted to point out that when you take a look at, we have a substantial increase in 2020, but I believe you have increases in the outer years, 2021 to 2024. The increases are 3.9%, 4.7, and then 2.1 and 2.3. So I don't disagree with your comments about a rigorous review. I mean, we do a rigorous review of revenues and expenditures as part of the budget process anyway. But percentage-wise, in those outer years, your percentages are probably reasonable in comparison to the cost of services and the cost increases you're going to see this is the only comment I want to make.
Okay, and we'll have to have a wholesome discussion about it because we're talking about accumulation of increases over the 5 years.
For sure.
Increases. We are talking about $1 million increase, which is basically close to a 20% increase over just 5 years. It's huge.
Yeah, point taken.
Okay, so therefore, just to go back to the original conversation then, I'm going to have that noted separately, Joyce, for taking forward to council.
Can I just
Yeah, Steph is just asking.
jumping in.
so if you could have 2 separate motions, that would make sense.
Okay.
Triggering something for council is not appropriate to do it through the body of minutes.
All right, what we will do, Joyce, if we may, under Steph's good guidance, is we will make, if we can pass this motion, we will then make a second motion that we take this forward as a second motion.
Is that
Is everybody okay with
Fred,
that?
is that good with you?
I think so.
Okay, on that understanding that we will do that, then can I go back, as we have it on the floor, we do have the recommendation on the floor, which has been presented and seconded. Can I just ask that we will be making this second motion? Can I just ask please for vote on this motion? But before I do, is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. can I just ask, I'm kind of looking around by votes of hands here for those to support the recommendation 4.1H.
Aye.
Fred?
Yes.
Fred, Joyce? Yes. Alison?
She's not in the meeting.
She's not in the meeting.
I can see Alison still here.
I think it might have been
I told her
Oh,
that
okay,
she's
all
not
right.
in the meeting.
I'm going to take that as someone will just do. Sorry, I can normally look at a row of hands here. I've got Fred, I've got Joyce, I've got myself. That's four. If you excuse my English, 4, and I will count Alison as abstaining.
She's not here. She's left the meeting, so.
No, she's still there.
No,
Or is that an old picture?
Yeah.
But she's like a member of the public watching, I think, at this.
Okay.
Like, I will have her as
She's-
abstaining. 'Cause-
So I'm not sure on the technicality. Has she?
Can you hear us, Alison?
If she's left, has she abstained?
If she's left, she's not
Oh,
included in
now
the
she's
minutes.
left. I believe she's no longer there.
Oh,
So she's not there. Then I will count 1 not present and 4, therefore the motion carries.
Okay.
I hope we have a quorum to do that. So
Oh,
1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 out of 6.
yes.
Well, we only have 5 members currently though, right?
Yes. So
We have-
total quorum.
total.
Okay, we do.
Okay, all right.
Okay, therefore, can we, following our discussion with Joyce, please just craft the second motion? And this
I got it.
is,
Steph has something.
yeah,
That the Finance Advisory Committee recommend to Council that a rigorous review of the revenues and expenditures of the 5-year plan be conducted.
I guess my only concern with this is this is an extra directive we're giving out that may entail a lot of work is already being done within the current process. I just don't want to bog down staff. That's my big thing on this.
okay.
I don't know, if Raj, if you can comment on
Yes,
that.
I was going to ask Raj, I mean, can we craft that so that given the work we've already done, we can satisfy the need of the motion without tying you up in endless hours? Over to you on this.
From my perspective, a rigorous review of the expenditures and revenues is done on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
So unless there was specific direction from council in terms of them wanting me to do additional work, I will continue to do a rigorous review. But if there is a specific direction to look for reductions in service levels to accommodate a reduction in the tax rate increase, I mean, then I could go looking specifically for that. What I am not contemplating without direction from council is a reduction in service levels. And from where I sit, our budgets are very lean, and there is no room in our budgets for reductions and to continue providing the levels of service we do. So again, this motion would probably have further implications from council, and I would need further direction from council. But I cannot see us actually doing a more rigorous review than we do. What as part of that, I definitely see us moving towards, and that is in the works, with improvements in technology. We're making improvements in technology so we can do quarterly reviews with the Finance Advisory Committee. I mean, right now we do a review in September of results, and then we do a review at the end of the year. I would like it to be a quarterly review of actual expenditures to budget on an ongoing basis. So we're working towards that with facilitating better technology.
Could we do that, Joyce, on a quarterly basis with the Finance Group Committee, as Raja has alluded to here?
Sure, we just haven't ever done it. We've had it promised to us for years.
Well, now let's make that motion now, and then it's on the table.
Okay?
So
Because I must satisfy you here, Joyce, because your point, when I passed the first motion, I did say that we would move on to this one, so I'm quite determined that you are going to nod in assent, knowingly, not out of exhaustion, approval
Why
of
don't
this.
we ask to see if he can come up with a motion to, regarding the reviews that he was proposing. I know that we had points of discussion, but I would like something firm as in a resolution.
Okay, yes,
Maybe, this is Fred here, maybe the resolution includes a reference of the committee, as you said, reviewing or reviewing with management those expenditure positions that we're talking about here. I'm trying to think of the right words for it. I still think the capital reserve one comes into the same motion too.
Yeah.
Because I think it highlights the fact, because I said it's, I think, a perfect fit for the committee, and I think it also makes it clear to everybody that that's what's going to happen. And so it becomes broader knowledge.
Can I make a suggestion here, Joyce and Fred? Fred, you're the new chair. You're obviously going to meet with Raj and
Yep.
sort of ham things out a bit. I know Alison had some other big concerns about information the committee's getting. I think Joyce's concern is shared amongst the group. Just not wanting to muddy the water at this stage, can we, at our next meeting, if need be, but have Fred meet with Raj, get this together, put together a plan moving forward on how the committee's going to work on these issues, and then present that at our next meeting, and then we have a bit of a framework moving ahead with the understanding that some of these issues, especially around ongoing financing of these projects, that's going to be embedded in the work that we're going to be doing moving forward.
Yeah. I'm not troubled by that, but I think the point that made earlier about this becoming broader, like known outside the committee, and to reflect the responsibility of the committee, is I don't think there's a problem in terms of our position, at least advice to council, that we intend to look at three areas. We intend to look at capital reserves, we intend to look at process, and we intend to look at expenditures. I don't know if we have to be any more detailed than that at this point,
Okay.
but I think we can reinforce it at our next meeting in a proper resolution.
Okay, and you want that resolution at the next meeting?
But I think I want the comments made about these three things that we've just said.
In this, okay.
You can also make a resolution that doesn't go to council. So it's just highlighted, it's in bold, and it's saying that the whole committee agrees that these three items are the priority.
Okay.
Because a lot of the comments, I'll say, comments or questions included, it can be from one person. This is
Yeah.
saying we all agree,
Yeah.
and it can just stay in your own file.
I want to pick up on one other point that Joyce made. Fred, I'm totally in agreement with that, and I hope Joyce is as well, but it must be established and enshrined that we do this on no less than a quarterly basis.
That's fine.
Because Joyce's comment was, and I have a sensitivity to Joyce's comments because she raised this and we kind of moved on accordingly, that we must not disappoint in terms of producing this agreement, no less on a quarterly basis. This is something that simply cannot diarise, from a diary point of view, be left to lag. And I'm also suggesting that, and this can be just off the record, that you and Raj, Fred, get together and do a kind of a diary notes for the rest of this year to set up these meetings, to get them in our diaries, as do other committees, to make sure this does not fall through the cracks, which I know was one of Joyce's concerns.
I'm fine.
Joyce, how are we doing so far?
Oh, we're doing fine. And I do want staff to know, it's not that I'm asking for more information, or I know it is more information, and I'm not questioning what you're doing. I think I'm probably sticking it to council to be looking.
Thanks, Joyce.
Yeah, we feel the pain, Joyce.
Thanks.
No, and I'm not trying to sidestep that one bit.
No.
So Steph.
So now I've got the council directs staff to include a quarterly review of capital expenditures with the Finance Advisory Committee.
Yes.
That's one, but I've also got the 3 bullet points that.
Well, can
Fred
we
said.
integrate
It wasn't capital expenditures. I think it was basically operational expenses, and I think the other one is capital reserve. We're going to be doing participating in that business around capital reserves that
Capital.
we addressed earlier.
Okay, so included a quarterly review of operational expenditures and capital reserves with the
Okay.
committee.
So this is now an internal motion, is it?
Well, I did say council direct staff, because if that's like 4 more meeting agenda documents we need to create,
Well,
do you want that? Council to direct you to do that?
I thought we were gonna do this as part of the
Okay.
committees moving forward.
Okay,
And
sure.
then Fred's gonna
Okay.
meet with Raj and we can get a bit of a grasp on what this is
Okay.
gonna look like.
I
and
I think what we're
resources.
talking about is me and
Resolve.
Fred establishing an agenda and meeting the agenda. I
Yeah.
don't think you need council to
Okay.
direct
Okay.
me on that.
So
yeah.
just add that the committee resolves.
Okay, the committee resolves. Okay, so what does, after all this, the committee resolve, Steph?
To include a quarterly review of operational expenditures and capital reserves. And,
Actually, no, just capital expenditures, you're not doing reserves on a quarterly
No,
basis.
that's right.
Yeah,
what I had, a review of capital expenditures with the committee and to,
And
No, not
actually, it's
capital expenditures,
no,
it's
it's
actually
operating and
operating, it
capital.
becomes operational expenditures.
operational expenditures.
And there's operational expenditures and there's capital reserves, this is the 2 separate items. Because capital reserve is a much more, I would say, significant independent review.
Yes.
Sorry, so it's a
From what's being
quarter,
proposed as an ongoing review.
so it's a quarterly review of operational expenditures, a
Yep.
one-time review of capital reserves?
No, the
No,
capital,
the capital reserves are,
No.
you can just say a review of capital, or a detailed review of capital reserves.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
A detailed review of capital reserves and a investigation or consideration of the committee process.
well, in consideration of the committee process and undertaking that the meetings will meet no less than quarterly.
Okay, so we have the quarterly review.
Yeah.
Okay, and a review of committee process, including quarterly meetings.
Yeah. Yes, because the committee process is something that Fred will be doing with Raj.
Okay.
just,
So,
So-
I don't want it just to be internal, I want council to see it.
Okay.
Council, I think
I
I'll,
want a solution for council to take action, but I want them to have it as a point of information, that they are resolved to do this.
Recommend that council directs staff.
it's not a recommendation to count, they get the
No.
minutes, don't they?
yeah.
Council will see it on the cover of their agenda.
However,
If
however,
it's-
what will be is when we report back, I will have
Yeah.
the issue, if it's on any consent agenda, I will have the issue raised and will draw the attention to council.
You know, I think, it's really, if it's drawn to attention of council, then it becomes,
Okay, we'll just say recommend to.
More out in the open, right?
staff.
Yeah.
Okay, they can't,
okay,
the committee recommend to council
It's all,
that.
it's all right, Joyce, the council's still on the hook here, don't worry.
Yeah.
No one has wriggled off.
You get the pay, it's big bucks, you might as well.
I know.
That the finance
Boy, I earned my money today, I tell you.
You did.
Okay,
So that, okay, advisory.
so can you now read that out, Steph? There's some sense of conclusion. And I probably will draw it to a conclusion there if everyone I think knows that we're all speaking with the same intention and spirit here.
Okay, so that the committee recommend to council that the Finance Advisory Committee conduct a quarterly review of operational expenditures, a detailed review of capital reserves, and a review of committee process, including quarterly meetings.
Okay, all right. Can I have a general
Yes.
consensus? Is there anyone who does not approve that? Is probably the easiest way for me to look at it. Hearing none, I will do it by a process of Zoom consent. And also, you have my undertaking, Joyce, as well, that this will be brought up in council in case it gets buried in a consent agenda or something.
Thank you.
Okay. I really do want you to be satisfied on this, because this was your point upon which I asked for the first motion to be passed. Okay, I just want to have one other very small item, please. We're one member of the committee short. May I request that Steph puts the necessary notices out requesting for additional members of the Finance Advisory Committee
So
in the usual way.
So the notices have gone out. I've said this to other committees. Word of mouth recruitment is usually much more effective. People like to spend their time with people that they know and respect and like. So if you guys know people in the industry that you'd like to tap.
So the message is word of mouth, and I will undertake to pass that on to Alison.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. And also, I presume I think we have passed, have we not, Steph, a note saying that we were going to send a note of thanks to Steve Ballerina, if we haven't already done so.
That's been done.
That's been done. So we have sent a note to Steve to thank him for his work as chair. In the spirit of trying to stay on time, although I feel I failed somewhat, can I thank everybody for their incredible patience for the first Zoom conference I've ever attended, and thank everyone for their implicit goodwill. And we will move on in these times in this way. I see no alternatives, and I'm sure we'll all learn and get better from it too. So with thanks, do I have your permission to close the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, take care, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Fred,
Thank you
thank you.
very much.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Joyce.
Joyce.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.